Hello and welcome to another episode of Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends spin a wheel every day leading up to Halloween, which is today. It chooses the horror movie and they discuss it. Today we're talking about 1998's Apt Pupil, which was directed by Bryan Singer. I'm your co-host Alec.
I'm Eric, and with us again, Dom Berger, our Stephen King expert. Dom, welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. This is, for me, on Halloween of all days, this is number 13 for podcast.
Whoa, is it really spooky number 13?
Spooky 13.
13 days out Halloween. Look at us, Alec.
Holy shit, Dom. So this is your 13th appearance on the show. It is the 13th day of the Wheel of Horror Halloween, and it's Halloween.
Fuck yeah. Like, we planned it, right, guys?
The last spin, too. I love it.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Well, it's interesting, Dom, because you specifically chose this movie. We were like, Dom, you pick any, well, we said Stephen King, so we didn't say any movie, but any Stephen King movie you want, and you chose this one. So I am curious, why this one? You've read every single book, so why this?
Dude, so it's so interesting, because, like, this is the first time I feel like you were like, hey, you know what? Pick any Stephen King. Right, and I'm trying to, you guys have done so many movies. A lot of them, you know, I've done with you, with Stephen King, and I'm like, what would be a really good one that maybe they haven't seen? So I was like, oh, there's a short novella. And I was trying to explain this to last weekend to Eric when I was, drinking at a wedding, but...
Yeah, we were on the bus ride back, and
I know,
like, what the fuck's this movie called? Apt Pupil? What? And you're like, it's like Shawshank Redemption and this. It's like, so I gotta watch how many movies? Like... It was funny.
So the whole thing is, it's this book called The Four Seasons, right? And each season is a different story. And there's four different stories in it. And this is, so the first story within this, you know, they're all shorter stories called novellas. And the first story is Shawshank. And it's pretty close to what the movie is. So people that love the movie would love the novella. And the next one is called they're different seasons. So that's fall. And this one is called The Apt Pupil. And it's the Summer of Corruption. Right? And I remember I never heard about it before listening to the audiobook. And you know it's a good audiobook and a good story when like you forget what you're doing and time just kind of like flies forward. And I just remember thinking, this is truly incredible. And then when I found out that there was a movie starring Gandalf himself, I was like, oh, this is going to be something a seasoned actor would really do well to be a part of. So have you guys seen this before, this movie?
Dude, never even heard of this movie. I didn't even know Stephen King had anything to do with it or that it even existed.
I've seen this movie 40 times. No, I've never heard of it. I've never heard of it. And same as Alec, never even knew about it. Yeah.
And, like, I feel like I know about, like, Stephen King books, even if I hadn't seen a movie or read about it. It's, like, thinner. Like, I know what it is, you know, but, like, this one, never even heard of it.
It's so interesting, too, because when he lists, like, some of his favorites, you know, he lists The Body, which is another story. So those are three, like, big motion pictures that are all part of the same collection of short stories.
Is The Body based off of Stand By Me, right?
Stand By Me, that movie, dude.
Yep.
So, like, you know, Stephen King is at, like, a new level with this. I think he wrote The Apt Pupil right after he wrote The Shining.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this actually takes place, I guess, kind of close to when he wrote it then.
Yeah, and there's a couple of crossovers from the story, I think. So, like, 217 is the room in The Shining, and then 217 in the book is the guidance counselor's, like, room number, his office number.
Oh, okay. So... is this your first time seeing the movie too, Dom?
Yeah, this is my first time seeing the movie, and should we explain what the story is about, or?
Yeah, why don't you go for it, Dom? Yeah.
All right, so it's a story about a Nazi war criminal who's living, you know, in this town, and, you know, he's in incognito, right? He's escaped, and, you know, he's kind of living under the radar. He's an old man at this point, and there's this kid, Todd Bowden, and he is like 14 years old or 15 in the book, but he's like at his high school and they're covering the Holocaust. And, you know, he takes a real big interest in like war crimes, and the teacher encourages them to like look into it further if they're interested. So he goes to the library and he's like flipping through all these books, and he sees this photo of a general from a concentration camp, Auschwitz, right? And he realizes that it's a guy, you know, an old man from his town. And then he confronts this guy, and the whole story is about the power dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, and is that pretty similar book or the novella and the film? They're pretty similar in that regard.
Yes, there's some really good, juicy differences, which I'm so excited to talk to you about. But like, what do you guys think of Todd in the movie, like as a character?
Eric, why don't you go? I have some thoughts on this, so I want to hear what you guys have to say first.
How do I describe? I thought he was like he starts off as a good character. He's a straight A student, and then he seems too bold for himself. Like I was like, this kid's so bold doing this. It's like out of left field. Like why is he like blackmailing this war criminal? And why doesn't he just turn him in? He must be deranged.
That's kind of what I felt too, Eric. I was like, maybe I'm sure the book gets into it more, but the film, I was like, what is the justification for this? Like, he's interested, sure, but like, he goes pretty dark pretty quick.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like really quick. It's like, dude, this is bold.
Yeah, and it's like, it seems like he's got a very loving family. He's 16 and he's a senior, so he's very smart. So you're like, this kid's got it all. Like, he's got a friend that cares about him. He's on sports teams. He's got a girl that wants to suck his dick in a car. Like, everything's going good for him. So I don't understand why, I don't really get why he's crazy.
Dude, I mean, he's absolutely crazy. But a thing that the book does really well to kind of explain is, so Todd shows up on like Dusanders' front porch, right? And he confronts him. He's super direct, like you said. But in the book, like, it's almost like a Scooby-Doo episode where he comes in and he's super excited to tell Dusander how he caught him, right? So Dusander's like, you're mistaken, boy. And he's like, no. He's like, like, I got your fingerprints. And it's all like hypothetical. And this kid, it feels like World War II to him is like a fantasy, right? He wants to hear these stories. And the more he starts to hear these stories, the realer it actually affects this, perfect kid, right? Who everyone's told, like, you're going places, Todd. In the beginning of the book, he really idolizes his parents. He thinks that all their advice is key. And like, he's fearless because he's like, well, you're a Nazi, so I'm allowed to do whatever, and it's completely justified. But what he wants to hear is more about, and I'm wondering, like, so have you guys noticed on Netflix, like, the fucking craze with all of these murder mysteries, right? All these documentaries about unsolved or solved murders.
Oh, yeah, sure. There's a whole channel about it. I mean, ID, that investigative discovery. It's all it is, 24 hours a day.
Dude, and it's like, people people eat that shit up. They can't put out enough, Jeffrey Dahmer / whatever, tapes, all these kinds of different documentaries that go into the life of serial killer. We have this weird, sick, as Americans, fascination with like murder and like war crimes and terrible things. So that's obviously interesting to Todd in the beginning, but what if it actually affected you in a way that started to corrupt you, right? The more you learn about these like war crimes, the more it starts to twist you. You have these bad dreams, like you can't sleep at night. And I think the thing that shocked Todd the most is like, it starts to really resonate with him. He's always a kid who's like forced things. They come easy. He can be like, get easy, good grades, and he can smile and make the basketball team. But on the inside, he's a fucking sociopath, right? Doesn't feel anything. And then he starts to see all these heinous things and these stories, and it starts to really resonate with him. And at first, Dusander, you feel bad for him. It's this old man who's like, seems like he's trying really hard to stay under the radar. And this kid is blackmailing him into reliving all of these, World War II POW camp stories. And all of a sudden, like, and at first you're like, oh, this kid he's really like putting this guy through the ringer. And I don't know, what do you guys think of the scene where he starts doing the marching?
I mean, it was odd. It was, again, I was like, why is he doing this? What is he getting out of making him do this now? Is it just because he can? I mean, I just didn't really understand his motivation. Mm-hmm. I think that's the problem with the film for me, was with his character. Like, I thought Ian McKellan was fantastic. I'm like, dude, this is like your Hannibal Lecter kind of. But
yeah.
The kid just, for some reason, there was a disconnect with me and him. The actor, at least.
Yeah.
It's a reverse, like, Holocaust, not Holocaust, but like, it was like, instead of Ian McKellen, I won't say Ian McKellen, Dusander, gassing people and controlling them, he was now controlling the Nazi. And it was kind of like that. That's what I saw from it. It's like, I'm controlling you now. You're not in charge anymore.
Mm-hmm. You know what's interesting, dude? So have you guys ever seen Dexter, the television show?
Yeah, I've seen all of it.
I've seen the first season.
So that premise where Dexter has like this smile on the outside and his internal monologue is always about like how fucking he's going to kill somebody, or he like, he thinks so little of people, and he does it all with a big smile.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Todd's like on the inside.
Okay.
And then in the beginning, like, Dusander's like, hey, I'm doing this to stay alive, right? And then he starts to spot in Todd like the same thing that he has, right? He's like, oh, I know that like you're enjoying these stories more and more. And it starts to bring out this, these behavior traits that have been, long put to sleep. And like everything in the movie, from like the cat in the oven to, some other things. But Todd in the movie, he actually escalates, like, it's a longer period of time. It's like, he's from 14 to I think the end of senior year. So he was like 17 or 18. And as Todd starts to like hear these stories, he starts getting angry. He kills the bird, in the book as well. And then Todd in the book, he's really grossed out by like homeless people in the same way that in the movie, Doosander is. And Todd starts murdering homeless people in like the train yard, right?
Damn.
And so like at the same time, they're both starting to like pick up very similar behaviors. But it's really weird because in the story, they can't trust each other. Each one of them says that they have a file somewhere that if something were to happen to them, it would, get exposed, and both characters would be in trouble. And both of them are lying.
Yeah, that was the kind of thing at the end. I thought like they would find a key and it would be like, oh, he was lying about lying. That's kind of what that was going to happen. But you know what? Just really quick. I mean, this is probably the first Stephen King film where I've seen where I'm like, I really would rather have read the book. I just felt like the director and the lead actor, there was just a disconnect with everything for me. I was like enjoying what I was watching. I wasn't bored at all or anything like that. I was always intrigued, but it just, for some reason, I just felt like there was a disconnect the whole time. Nothing really made sense to me, the justifications, even when Ian McKellan killed the homeless guy. I was like, why is this even happening? Why isn't he like taking his time to really, all right, I'm going to like, stay under the radar. I don't want to fuck with this guy. I know he knows who I am, but I don't know.
Felt unrealistic. I think that's what you're saying too. It's like, why is this happening? Like, this doesn't add up. Like, where's the real reason?
Yeah, you explaining it, Dom, fills in the blanks for me and makes me like appreciate the story more. But I just think, I don't know. I think the director just kind of dropped the ball a little bit.
I agree. I mean, it was a 2-hour movie, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking like maybe the pacing. And really, in the story, the reason that they start doing these like crazed acts is because it starts to break them down. Like these characters, like Todd starts really flunking courses, and he starts talking back to people. He's always angry because, when his grades drop, all of a sudden he can't hold this disguise on anymore, and his parents will suddenly realize that like something's been going on. But he needs those stories because it's the only place that he's actually excited. And like drives him to so much anger, and he can't kill Doosander because he's so paranoid that even when Doosander, in the book, Doosander's like, there is no letter. And he's like, I can't even trust that you're telling me the truth right now. Like, that's how much of a piece of shit I think you are, is I can't even trust that you're like, when you tell me that I'm off the hook, that you're not lying to me.
Let's say that he never met Dusseldorf or whatever. Like, let's say that this never happened, or whatever his name is. What do you think would happen to Todd? Do you think he would have became a serial killer, or like, did he need this event to like spark this in him, and it just happened that this guy lives in his neighborhood?
And that's the whole premise, right? It's like this could happen in middle America with like the most promising young boy who's empty, right? If they have like a need for control like Todd does, like you can tell his relationship with girls was never going to work out. In the movie they say like he's not into girls, which in the book it's even worse. It's like his sexual awakening is all about the Jews being tortured by the Germans, right? He has these like sex dreams about like strapping a young girl down, and like all these terrible stories that he's being told by Ian McKellan. Like they start to really mess with his psyche. So he meets this girl who's like, the girl that he's supposed to date in the town. They're like the logical choice, and he can't have sex with her unless he's imagining like a fantasy that's really fucked up.
Well, that's what we needed in this movie, and we didn't get it. This is like you're at a poker table and you have 10 chips, and you're like, I'm gonna just put 7 in. This movie did not go all in. It feels like it was reserved in the way you're describing it, Don. Because if they went there, that'd be way more. Way more. But it would make more sense.
But just wait till you hear the ending, because it is very, very different.
All right. Let me just say one thing, and maybe I'm hoping this is different in the book, because I watched this with Mike Valenti. Obviously, you guys know him, but people on the podcast. And we were both kind of sitting there. I was like, hold on. Because he goes to the hospital at the end. He has the heart attack or whatever. He goes into the hospital. The Jewish guy sees him, tells on him, and says, like, that's a Nazi or whatever. Can you just fingerprint a person when they're unconscious? They're like, that does, I guess we'll believe this guy. Like, we'll just go do that. Like, is that a thing? Is that what happened in the book?
I mean, it's very similar in the way that, like, the Jewish guy recognizes him. They come to his bed. But in the book, it's kind of like, you know, he's like, I'm going to come back for you. You know, it's not so, like, official as it seems like in the movie. This guy's like, I know who you are, and I'm coming back for you. So it's interesting because in the movie, like, the people that are investigating the crime are kind of clueless that Todd's involved.
Right.
In the book, they're, like, on him. Like, they know he's lying, right?
Okay.
And he's like, oh, no, like, I'm about to get found out. If they find any solid argument, right now it's hearsay, if they find any solid argument, and that's when his guidance counselor shows up at his door.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, hey, I'm going to tell on you. And Todd this is a spoiler.
Hey, I mean, you got to do it. You got to do it.
Very calmly takes out. So in the movie, they make a point of him being like, oh, Todd doesn't touch guns, right? And I'm sure it has to do with, like, school shootings and shit. I don't know, maybe. But, like, in the book, Todd takes the whole book, he's imagining taking the rifle to, like, over the interstate and just opening up and just killing people.
Jeez.
Right? So when his teacher comes to the door and it's like, I know what happened, Todd, you know, like, something doesn't line up. This war criminal that you said was your grandfather, you know, like, you need to explain yourself. I need to talk to your parents. And Todd takes the rifle and just blows him away. And then, fucking kills him. And, like, the guidance counselor dies. And then Todd goes to that spot above the freeway. And then it ends with, he goes 6 hours later, you know, after all the chaos, they finally took him out.
That's what should have happened, dude.
Yep.
Yeah, the ending was so, like, David Schwimmer, don't give up. Like, what the fuck? Why are you giving up? Like, you have him.
Because he blackmails them. He blackmails them into thinking, like, he was sexually harassed or whatever, or pedophile, I don't know.
Yeah, weird. But come on. God, I hated that ending. But really quick, Dom, like, in the hospital, in the movie, he fingerprints him, which I'm like, I don't think you can do that. So in the book, did Stephen King...
don't.
Okay, what did he do in the book? Because I was like, that pissed me off.
In the book, he showed up with, like, a picture and, like, threw it in his face. And he's like, we know it's you, right? He's like, we're coming back for you. And Dusander's like, you know, instead of doing the air blow through the thing, he just takes a bunch of pills, you know? And it's wild, though, because in the movie, it's like, oh, this is the transition from Todd being involved to not being involved. Ian McKellan throws him into the basement, and he's like, you got to take care of this. In the book, Todd's been killing his own, like, little tribe of whatever. So when he kills a homeless person, Todd's grades get better. He sleeps better. He becomes like this normal person because he obsesses over all of these things that he wants, like this murder and all this stuff that he's heard from Ian McKellan. And he's like, the only way he can exercise it is he has to kill somebody every, 3 months or so. So when Ian McKellan starts having that heart attack and calls Todd comes over. The guy's already dead. And Todd's like, not so much like, oh, I have to help you kill him and whatever. Todd's like pissed off. He's like, old man, you're going to make me bury this guy with you. Like, he's not fazed at all. He doesn't, he's just like, you're being sloppy. Like, you're a drunk and you're sloppy. And I don't know. I thought that was interesting that they wouldn't find any blood the way that it happened in the movie, right?
Yeah, dude. And also, like, in the movie when the dad's like looking at the phone, like, he's like, I think something's weird with that phone. It's like, what? And there's like the little blood print on it or whatever, and then he's like, come on, Dad. It's like, how would he even remotely know? But you know what I'm talking about? When he's in the kitchen, he kind of like glances at the yellow phone. And he just kind of like makes a face like, Like, wait, what? Why would he even make that face at the phone?
It's like, dude, you think your son's in the next room and just watch somebody have a heart attack. Like, what are you doing checking out the kitchen right now?
It was just weird, dude. I don't know. And then the cat, too. It's like, you think, he's like, oh, the cat gets away. And then later there's just like the sign or whatever being like cat missing or whatever. So he's like, so he did kill it? I don't know.
Dude, it's so, in the book, it's a terrible joke, but like Todd shows up after he burns the cat in the oven and he's like, old man, it smells like shit in here. And he's like, oh, burned my dinner. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
like, oh.
No, Eric, you're actually that analogy you used earlier is like 100% right. Like the movie just feels like
didn't
it
go all
didn't.
in.
Yeah, it didn't. And if it did, it would have. This movie probably would have like made waves, dude. If it was like, yo, there's a
If you
cat
went
killing
full in.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because I like don't really think this is like a very popular movie that a lot of people really know. It's not like a household movie, but it's got a great cast. Bryan Singer's a pretty big director at now, I guess. But
You got David Schwimmer at like the height of Friends, pretty much, right? Or like,
yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah, so I mean, dude, and like Ian McKellan did a great job. Like, I'm not saying he didn't do a good job.
It's probably the production company telling him, you can't do this, and Bryan Singer's just like, God, like this isn't the movie then. Like
There was a huge pushback.
Yeah, I'm sure. But the way you're describing it, Dom, is that Todd is way more evil in the book than.
Oh yeah, it's
this.
it's actually like it's evil to the like. Think about Dexter. Like it's enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
Like these people love him, and they're like, Todd, you're gonna go places, and he's in his head. He's like, you fucking, see you next Tuesday. And Ian McKellen like brings it out in him, so he just gets worse and worse. And by the end, you're like, when he kills his first person, it's like there was a pain in his head, and all of a sudden he just like loses it, and he's like, oh, I felt so free. I've never felt more liberated in my life, and that's when he decides to go on his rampage.
It almost seems like the book at least is like American Psycho a little bit, where he's just so like thinking about like fuck you like sort of thing at somebody, but then like doesn't do that at all.
Yeah, and he doesn't have social cues. Like in the beginning, like you said to him about being direct, in the book he's even more like weirdly unaware that he's like threatening to ruin this guy's life. He's like, let me tell you next about how I nailed you and like what I'm going to do to you if like you don't tell me stories. And it's all so positive and like there's no malice to it. He's just so excited that he's outmaneuvered this Nazi and now he gets like complete control over him.
God. Yeah, dude, the novella sounds way, way better. What do you think, though, Dom? Did you like the movie, or, I mean, I'm assuming you like the novella better?
I love the novella. I like the movie only because, like, the novella was so good, and then watching Ian McKellen with his German accent was great. Like, every choice he makes, I'm like, this guy knows exactly what he's doing. I didn't love Todd, and I didn't necessarily love because they added a friend, in the book in the movie. They're like, oh, he has a best friend from Mighty Ducks, that dude.
Yeah, Joshua Jackson.
Fucking Charlie.
There you go.
Oh my god, dude. And like in the book, like Todd has no close friends because he's so weird. He just doesn't. I mean, people are nice to him, but like he doesn't trust anyone. He has weird racist and anti-Semitic thoughts that like overpower him. It's really wild to watch.
But like you have to be taught to have like racist anti-Semitic thoughts, like, and his parents don't seem like the kind of people that are into that kind of stuff at all. This isn't like American History X. So like you could be a psychopath, like I think that might be inherent like in your DNA, but like you're not born racist.
Right. Well, he was taught about the Holocaust in school, and I think that triggered him. He's an evil kid.
No. So this is
I felt that way though.
So the point that I think Stephen King makes is like even like this small neck of the woods, they're not anti-Semitic, right? But they look down, they're all wealthy. So they have like this homeless problem in town, and all the rich people say like shitty things about the homeless people. And everything's like, Todd, you're going to go places. You're not going to end up like some wino down in the street. And then that's why Todd's like, it's okay if I kill these winos because they're not real people. They've had their chance and I'm better. And then it makes that analogy to
There's
like...
none of that in this movie. There's none of that. That makes
I
so
know.
much more sense.
Yeah.
Were you guys super confused with that whole scene with like, Ian McKellen in the kitchen with the wino and like...
Yeah.
What the hell was that about? Yeah.
I know.
Why did he get so shit-faced with him? Was that just so he could like hurt him? But like he's also getting super shit-faced too. So
Well, in the book, he does it regularly. Like he like walks by the liquor stores, and then when like a homeless guy asks him for, to buy him something, he's like, well, hey, listen, follow me home, get off a stop before I do on the bus, right? So no one knows that that homeless person went to his house. Mm-hmm. And he's like, meet me there, and then maybe I'll give you $10. And he lures in like a couple of them. And by the time Todd goes to bury the last one, when Dusander's having a heart attack, his entire house smells like fucking dead people. Like, it's awful.
I know we've said this before, but I've never ever felt as strongly about this film as I have of any other Stephen King movie. This needed to be a miniseries. Like, they really could have done this justice. I know we said that for Misery, but I think this one really, really, there's so much missing, you know?
Yeah. And it, I'm like, obviously money was put behind this. I'm shocked that, and some of the scenes are like really good representations of stuff that happened in the book. But it did feel a little bit like, for number one, I didn't believe that like Todd was really a threat. I know he was crazy, but he just looked like he could get pushed over with a stiff breeze.
Yeah, that was, dude. And I read about this actor, Brad Renfeld. Was that his name? What is it?
Yep.
Brad Renfro, yeah. And dude, I mean, Jesus Christ, Eric, he gives Edward Furlong a run for his money. I mean, did you read about this guy at all?
Real? Not at all. Jeez. Eddie Furlong, though, he's how many years sober at least?
Yep.
Oh, he died. This kid died. 25.
Yeah. So, dude, he was probably right around the same time as Edward Furlong.
Heroin and morphine intoxication.
Yeah. Dude, he died 25. He's a kid too. Yeah, so really, and it's funny, it's not funny, but I can't remember what movie, but Joe Testa brought him up, and he was like, oh yeah, like he was really going to be a big actor, I think, and then he died, and I can't remember what other movie he was in, but this is the first time I think I've ever seen him in a movie.
I recognize him.
He was in like a John Grisham movie, right? The Client or something?
Oh yeah, you're right, The Client, yeah. I don't know, maybe this role was just not right for him, but I did not think he was well cast. I don't know.
I always get nervous when they put somebody side by side, and a lot of it was just the two of them, right?
Yeah.
Like with someone so good.
Oh my God, dude.
Oof.
I was thinking about that. Sorry to cut you off, but Ian McKellan, dude, is, in his prime, like coming off of Broadway, all of this theater experience. And this kid was 15 when they made this movie, dude. Can you imagine how much pressure that is?
Dude, I think about this all the time. I feel like when you are... like, and I'm sure this kid felt pressure, but when you're like before the age of 16, you walk into fucking auditions, you have no idea the pressure. You're like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And then, I mean, Alec, you're a professional, so I'm sure it changed with you, but I'm 32 years old. I still audition for community theater stuff, and I'm nervous. I'm like sitting out there and I'm like, I don't want to be doing this on a Wednesday night.
I don't think that ever really goes away. Unless like you don't want it, like you're going out for a commercial and you're like, I don't fucking care. And then they're like, he's perfect. That was perfect. Like you just don't care at all. But it's always the ones that you're like rehearsing lines for days and days. You're like, I'm going to nail this. And you go in there like, all right, thank you. But yeah, you're right though. Like this kid had no idea, like, holy shit, I'm acting with literally one of the best actors in the world.
Oh, he's so good. So good.
I don't know, Dom. I mean, because this kind of came out around the time when Stephen King was like heavy drinking, right?
Yeah.
The book did, or this movie?
Or the book?
The book, I think the book came out in, 82?
So it takes place in 84, I think. At least the movie did.
In the movie, it's 84. In the book, it's 75, 76.
Okay. Was he as heavy of a drinker in the book as he was in the movie?
Ian McKellen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a drunk.
Okay, so I feel like Stephen King is just like,
Stephen King
dude.
is writing about drunks all the time.
I know.
All the time.
He's so good at it, too. It's like, yeah, absolutely, man. Just write what you know. It's fantastic.
What did I do today? All right. DeSander threw his cat.
Method.
Drinks a whole bottle of bourbon and smokes 2 packs of cigarettes. It's like, no, but like, I'm just imagining, like, this guy is just watching cartoons, drinking a bottle of bourbon and smoking cigarettes. Like, that's his life. He goes from a Nazi war camp, like, death camp guy to Mr. Magoo getting drunk. Like, how do you like live with yourself,
dude? Yeah, and in the book, like that, the whole reason Todd gets him this outfit is he shows up and he's like, you're so disappointing, like you're just this drunk old pathetic man. So he's like, I'm gonna put you into this outfit, and they put Ian McKellen into the outfit, and he stands up straight. And in the book, like Todd's like, all of a sudden, like I got nervous, like my instincts kicked in, like I could see the man that he was. And they talk about these stories about how Ian McKellen at the camps would interrogate prisoners to find out where like hidden jewels or who was lying about things. And he's like, the trick was I was very kind to them. And these Jews were all starving. And he's like, in the background, I was always just slowly cooking lamb stew. And he's like, and they would sit there and sure enough, I would bring people in to rat on other people. And they would start off strong, and the smell of lamb stew just slowly cooking. And by the end, they are just babbling. And he's like, if anything, they would tell you anything you wanted to hear. So you just had to figure out what was true and what wasn't. But it's like, this dude in the book is super convincing, super, you know, I wanted more time with that character. Like, you know, if you're going to get someone like Ian McKellan to play him, give him more scenes.
Yeah.
There's some powerful lines that he delivered, you know, when he's talking about, like, people in the gas chambers climbing on top of each other to get fresh air the higher they go. And then he asks them, like, where's the kids? And then he'd say, like, the bottom. And it's like, that was probably the roughest line. Another well-delivered line was at the end of the movie when he's just like, how did it feel? What was that line, Dom?
Yeah, that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was very powerful. And McKellan, man, he's such a good actor.
Yeah.
Dude, there's some really fucked up stories in the book, and like I could easily, without those stories even being told in the movie, I could easily see, like, now when I re-listen to the story, I picture Ian McKellen very easily. Just like that performance transcends the scenes he's in.
Such a shame, dude. It just really feels like they dropped the ball. I don't want to know why. I don't know. But I gotta say, that dude, even though the air embolism or whatever he gives himself is only in the movie, that thought has never even crossed my mind that somebody could do that to themselves. And seeing it, I was just like, oh my God. Like, I was like, dude, I was like, yeah, it was friggin' crazy. Also, just want to give a quick shout out to Ann Dowd. Looking good, Ann Dowd.
Incredible.
I was like, damn, that's Ann Dowd? Like, all right.
Dude, I was also thinking that. Beautiful.
Yeah. I also liked the dad is the politician in X-Men.
Yep. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh my God, they're probably
that's a Bryan Singer movie, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he's like, I'm going to bring over Ian McKellen and the dad.
Yeah. It's like, listen, you were a senator in the last one. We turned you into the Blob. I'm going to give you a little bit juicier. We're going to have your hair flowing. You're going to look great.
Yeah. You're a Magneto. A Holocaust survivor. It's like, what?
Well, honestly, I really like the story. I mean, it's fucked up, but it's an interesting story. I did not like this film though that much. I think it might be kind of towards the bottom for my Stephen King adaptations.
Yeah.
You know, it pains me to say that because I love Ian McKellen so much.
I'd have to agree, but I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, me too.
I liked it to some extent.
Yeah.
Overall, I wish the flow was better. Like, there were certain scenes, and especially if you come from the novella, you're like, I want to see those scenes happen. And they do fan service that up. So you're like, oh, you remember the scenes that were in the book. But on the whole, like, having to watch it, I ask you guys every time, I'm like, did it flow good for you guys? And usually you're like, yeah, we can put the story together. This is the first time that, like, I think that they didn't do enough to keep the continuity going.
Mm-hmm. I think you're 100% right, Dom. Yeah, you do always ask us that. You're like, did that make sense? And it never hasn't. And this is the first time where I'm like, I didn't really know what the fuck, why people were doing what they did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, whatever. Hey, it's Halloween. Who cares?
It's
whatever.
Halloween. Yeah. Well, Dom, at the start of the podcast, you said, you know when you get a good audiobook, and I forget what you said. You said something along the lines where you just, like, forget what you're doing.
Yeah, time just flies.
I thought you were going to say, like, you know when you listen to a good audiobook and you just, like, run a red light. Like...
You just mow down some trick-or-treaters and you're like, oh.
Oh my God.
I thought you were going to say something like that. I was like, I know he listens to these when he drives.
You pop the curve and you just take out a bunch of Frankensteins and you're like, whoops.
Run a red light. That's hilarious. Well, Dom, thank you very much for joining us for our last day of the 13 Days of Halloween, dude.
Oh, it's an honor.
Eric, we did it, brah.
I know, another year. I mean, I don't want to dwindle anymore. I know last year we did 31, this year 13. 6 is a spooky number. We could do 6 next year. No, we're sticking with 13, people. We're going to be back next year 100%.
Oh, yeah. I think 13's a sweet spot, you know.
Doable. Last year, I took years off my life.
Yeah. But yeah, everybody, seriously, thank you so much for listening for the past 13 days. We will be back next Monday with another episode, which we don't know what it is yet, but we will let you know. And we just also want to thank iHeartRadio, for joining with us. Just thank you for helping us out and for matching us up with all those awesome sponsors. So thank you very much. And Eric, thank you for going on this journey with me.
Thank you, Alec. Thank you to our guest, and also thank you to our other co-host, Justin Willickson. Been a fun one. Been a much more enjoyable year this year than previous years when we're up at 3 a.m. watching Rosemary's Baby. So,
yeah,
this is a way better year for doing this, and I really enjoyed it. This is the best year yet. my mind.
Yeah, and a special shout out to Justin too. Yeah, I was definitely gonna not forget him. So
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you did, so that's why I had to say something.
no, oh my God, no. Well, all right. Thank you again, everybody, and we will see you all next week with something.
We'll find out. See you next week. Woo! Happy Halloween.